Saturday morning. Let's keep it a bit more cheerful so we stay a bit awake. So I've tried to prepare my presentation based on what was not in the other presentations, because otherwise it would have been a bit repetitive. So I've also seen that yesterday there was a colleague of mine from the European Institute of Innovation through Health Data that talk about the European health data space and data quality. So I won't touch upon that. What I will try to do today with you is trying to see what happened when actually some of AI innovations arrive to the treatment field, and so that finally our patients can. Yeah, no worries, it's okay. We can figure it out. Yeah. Actually, I'm Italian, so I like to move and stand, and so okay. Indeed, we have seen, I think, in the presentation of these 2 days, maybe I will do a bit seated, a bit stand up, I will figure it out. So we have seen that AI in longevity research and longevity treatment can be used in many, many different ways. But my research so far has been focusing on how AI is implemented in treatment for any kind of treatment. So in that regard, when we talk about longevity treatments or age-related treatments, the legal considerations, the ethical consideration are not very different in this field than any other, because we have to do the maths for artificial intelligence in clinical practice. And in that sense, it's not very different from other fields. Of course, implementing AI in clinical care brings so many legal questions, so many ethical questions. I don't know if any of you have a legal expertise in the room. Okay, fantastic. So I can say whatever. Basically, the many questions that I've seen during my PhD and in my work at the Institute are mainly related to 3 main areas that I call medical AI competencies, patient-centeredness, and medical AI safety. We start with medical AI safety, but they are all part of a bigger ecosystem of trust, we can say. Like in the European Union, we talk about trust. We talk about how do we ensure that the AI system that we bring to the people, that we use in front of the people, is actually used in a trustworthy way and respect fundamental rights, ethical values, principles, valid in the European Union. So starting with medical AI safety, basically, when we talk about medical AI safety in the European Union, we go back again to that plan of making artificial intelligence trustworthy. What does it mean in our legal acquis? It means to have some technical requirements that applies to our AI systems based on the risk classification. And this is what the AI Act, together with the medical device regulation, but also the in vitro device regulation in the case of the presentation that we saw before, how the 2 regulation comes together, and basically the risk classification of the 2 has to be summed up, and the requirements basically has to be satisfied contextually at the same time by the 2 manufacturers. So both the manufacturer of the medical device, but also the one of the AI. What happens? We indeed have to comply with these requirements. We indeed have to make them sure, and we will label them and put them in the market. Now, we do have some issues when it comes to medical AI, and mainly the 2 issues related to safety is clinical evaluation, access to market, and HTA. What I mean is, when we talk about health technology assessment for artificial intelligence, we have no specific framework. One of the projects that the Institute of Innovation through Health Data is engaged with right now is trying to elaborate an assessment framework. Basically, what happens after the CE label is applied to our AI system. What happens then? Once the requirements are all satisfied, national bodies that pertain to the HTA framework have to make an economical medical evaluation to that AI system and finally allow it in the national market. Now, this assessment is not very clear, is not coherent in all the different countries in the European Union. At the same time, now the Medical Device Coordination Group is working together with tech companies and also with the legislator related to the AI Act to see how the medical device regulation and the AI Act comes together. Because the problem is when you add a regulation on the top of another, despite is with like all the goodwill you can have, you always have some implementation issues. In the case of the medical device regulation and the AI Act, the problem is that they regulate access to market in a very different way. So basically, according to the medical device regulation, you should have already a CE label to enter the market, when according to the AI Act, you still are in the trial phase, in the sandbox phase, basically according to the AI Act. So now we are still waiting to see how this is going to be solved from a legal point of view, from a matter of applying the two regulations together. Now, passing to medical AI competencies. This is one of my favorite points, actually, because when we talk about artificial intelligence in healthcare, we often think that it's going to take over the majority of the tasks, that it's going to automatize whatever we do in healthcare. And that's not really the case when it comes to medical practice. So during my research in the last now 5 years, I've been trying to identify which will be the role of the healthcare professional according to the applicable regulation, but also according to what AI can do in the medical practice. And basically, what came out is that the healthcare professional should have both a role as AI controller and AI mediator. What I mean with that is that as AI controller, the healthcare professional should have sufficient skills to validate, refuse, challenge the output of the AI system used in healthcare, right? As AI mediator, the healthcare professional should be able to build trust from the side of the patient towards the AI system, basically bring the innovation to the end user, bring the innovation to the affected person of the treatment, right? And what I've tried to do in the research was trying to see whether in the various regulation that applies to the skills of healthcare professionals, that all the regulation that applies and see what a doctor is supposed to know when practicing medicine, if there is anything related to digital skills, and there is not. So we have a massive problem in terms of medical competencies, even leaving AI aside, just in terms of digital competencies. Healthcare professionals are not by law supposed to know something about digital treatments. Yeah, I noticed that there are some questions as well.
Yeah, just no go.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, according to what we know, according to the law, healthcare professionals shouldn't have a competence. It's not moving anymore, right? Yeah. So what I've tried to do then was trying to see if, according to the AI Act, I don't know how familiar you are with the AI Act. Zero? Very little. Very little? No, you like it? Okay. A bit. Okay. Okay, so basically one of the most interesting article with regard to AI competencies is Article 4. Article 4 is completely dedicated to AI literacy. And it's very interesting to read the article and try to think how this is implemented in the healthcare field. Because according to that article, it would seem that healthcare institutions have a sort of responsibility to train healthcare professionals in using artificial intelligence. And this would have massive implication when it comes to medical liability structures. Okay. At the same time, the AI Act gave us another input when it comes to medical competencies in Article 14 of the AI Act, that is human oversight. There is a bit of a discussion going on in the academic field for sure, but not only, because I was talking with a friend from MedTech the other day, and he was saying, yeah, we are actually struggling with that as well. So basically, this requirement says that a human should always oversee, should always be able to reverse interact with the process of the AI system while being in use. That human in the healthcare field is most likely the healthcare professional. Now, obviously, in reality, how it works in hospital is not the healthcare professional alone that operates with the devices, but normally there are technical bodies that help him or she out in working with these devices. So therefore, we might think that the human oversight is the healthcare professional or is a team of experts with different technical backgrounds. What is important to stress is that the human oversighter is supposed to have technical skills on artificial intelligence to reverse the process, to know how to read the outcome. So in the moment in which the healthcare professional is recognized as human oversighter, he's supposed to have certain competencies. Now, there is another article in the AI Act that would suggest, again, some competencies for the healthcare professional, but is way more closer to the realm of patient-centeredness. Now, let me see what is the next slide. Okay, so we go there later. So, as I said before, the problem is that if we suggest that the AI Act is giving some competencies, is ascribing some competencies to the healthcare professional, then the liability structures change. Because not only the doctor will be liable under medical liability competencies and medical liability structures, but also according to the AI liability framework, which has been approved like this week somewhere. At the same time, in medicine, it would be very hard to use artificial intelligence and get away with any unfortunate effect because AI is not yet the standard of care. As the previous presenter was saying, it's very hard now that AI instruments get to the market and get actually employed because we are still not at that stage yet. We're very far away from there. For now, we are talking about all of this, but it's still very much a hype. So we like to be prepared. We like to have all the legal answers to the problems, but this is not reality yet. So the problem is that in the moment in which we are going to use artificial intelligence in healthcare and a doctor follows outcome of an AI system, well, we would have a problem if something goes wrong because the doctor cannot say, I just respected the standard of care. I just followed the best course of medicine, the golden standard, and it would have quite some issues in terms of medical liability. This is actually a real problem because it isn't, how do you say, it actually scare out. What is happening? Where?
Yeah.
So, okay.
Else.
Okay.
It's not.
Just guy, mute your computers. Okay. So, what I was saying, thanks. The healthcare professionals are a bit skeptical in using artificial intelligence right now because they cannot justify it scientifically, the follow-up of the outcomes according to the rule of medical science, unless the AI outcome is mirroring exactly the standard of care. No, it's not happening anymore. Okay, now, in terms of patient-centeredness, and I think this is the most interesting aspect related to longevity care and aging treatment. So basically, in healthcare, one of the main principles is patient-centeredness. What it means is that there is a constant, how do you say, discussion and bilateral intervention of values and knowledges between the doctor and the patient. It means that medical knowledge can only be practiced when in accordance to the patient values, right? And in the legal sphere, we have, which is actually also a very ethical norm, we have informed consent. Informed consent is like the materialization of that principle of patient-centeredness. Basically, let's try to bring medicine closer to the patient that actually respect his values. Now, when an AI system is used in healthcare, one of the main issues related to patient-centeredness is how do we bring the patient aware about the use of an artificial intelligence in their care? And if we have to make them aware, because that's also a very valid question, is it relevant to let the patient know that there is an artificial intelligence in use? Then we can make some considerations, because this is always a very interesting point to discuss. I think in the realm of longevity care, in the realm of aging treatments, this is incredibly interesting. Why? Because there is a sort of ethic implied in how the AI system is used. So let me get you an example. So we might have an artificial intelligence system, for example, for supporting medical decisions that is technically forced to choose the outcome that is more, how do we say, that support an ethic of life. What I mean is better to live longer than live more qualitatively, okay? For example, it's a bit of a dystopic example, but it's just to get you the point. The problem is the patient supposed to know that inner ethic inside the medical decision supported by the artificial intelligence? Because perhaps the patient doesn't want to live longer. Maybe the patient wants to live less, but in a way more qualitative way, or vice versa. So this is a very valid point, and this is a very interesting point to discuss, I think, because right now, in general, how we regulate informed consent is still very vague, with or without artificial intelligence. The informed consent structure is very much related to the freedom of the healthcare professional. The healthcare professional, even in Belgium with a law on patient rights, there are many articles that says that basically, well, Article 7 and 8, that basically the healthcare professional should, according to the patient that has in front, disclose the amount of information that is appropriate to the patient, that the patient can process, that the patient can consider useful to make an informed choice, a valid medical choice. But there is nothing that tells you which kind of information to disclose to the patient, let alone artificial intelligence, let alone the ethic involved in the processing of your data, let alone the ethical behind the medical choice of the artificial intelligence. So there is no single answer that fits all the, there is no single answer that fits all these questions. And saying that artificial intelligence should always be disclosed to patient is actually absurd, because this is not how healthcare now works. Also, there are two main points that we should consider when actually processing this information about whether the patient should or should not know. Is the fact that artificial intelligence, most of the time, when it's useful, is not transparent, is black box, is not explainable. And so we will tell the patient, we will give the patient some information that are approximate, that are not actually reflecting the process of the AI system. So we will just explain the patient something about AI for the sake of the explainability, but not because actually we have some valuable information to give the patient. Second point, the desirability of those information. Again, we have said that the disclosure degree of information to the patient is very much matched to the patient that we have in front of us as healthcare professionals. So if we have an elderly person, for example, how much valuable is the information about the artificial intelligence use in their care for that patient, for example, especially in a moment of vulnerability, as is the one of healthcare delivery. So the second point is very much the desirability of that information, the understandability of that information. So my point a bit is that inferring that we have to inform the patient 100% because yes, we should, is absolutely absurd and it cannot work. What I strongly believe, and this is part of my job at the Institute, is really developing frameworks for health digital literacy for every kind of patients, for every kind of health professionals. Because that's, for me, the investment point right now, is really making the patient aware, is really making the patient able to understand the information that he wants to understand, that are valuable for him, for his decision about the medical path that he's carrying out. So just to sum up, I made 3 points, one related to safety of medical AI, one related to medical competencies, one related to patient-centered use of AI. So medical AI safety, for now, is very well regulated. We have some regulation that applies at the same time. We are very happy about those, at least in the academic field. Probably the companies are less happy about it. Absolutely sure about it. But we still have some issues in bringing them together, especially with regard to clinical validation, especially with regard to health technology assessment, especially with regard to access to market. Secondly, medical AI competencies. It's amazing what we can do with artificial intelligence in clinical care, but it's not going to automate every kind of process, every kind of relation we have with the patient. So medical healthcare professionals should really be made aware of the potentialities, but also the risk, the ethical challenges, and the technical features. And it's very hard to find a degree of the acceptability of those competencies, and also what is reasonable to ask from medical people, because they are already asked to know so many medical competencies, and now we are asking something more. For sure, we should update, but it's not going to happen under the Hungarian presidency. We should, probably not, but it's because it's not in the priority of the Hungarian presidency. We should update medical competencies in general with regard to digital skills. This for sure, with or without artificial intelligence. Lastly, autonomy enhancing solutions. What I mean is, it's very nice to talk about informed consent, but informed consent is not the problem, because the problem is that the people don't have a health literacy, let alone the digital health literacy. So we still have a lot of work to do in that regard. And I think this is very, very valuable in the perspective of enhancing aging-related treatment. This was all from my side. And wait, I forgot to add a slide, but I think my colleague yesterday already promoted the conference. So in Jens, right? In Brussels, in March, we have a conference, the Health Data Summit. We're going to talk a lot about artificial intelligence. We're going to talk a lot about health data and quality of health data. So you're all very welcome to join us. Thank you.
Yeah, for this time, I will directly, I would say, make my first comment and maybe ask a question. Yeah, I would say each time I'm listening to somebody speak, knowing a lot about what's happening, it becomes even more complicated, you know?
Absolutely.
And also each time I'm going to a medical doctor, I see the difference between theory and what's going in practically. And also almost each time I'm listening to a long conference, let's say, I learn something. I learn that something that I've thought was true is not true. Or yeah. So in very short, it will never work if we are trying to go like this with more and more and more and more layers of legislation. So how? Yeah, I don't know how to say that, but how can we simplify things that it's really going to work pretty fast? And one of the things people were saying, it's yeah, you don't need to wait that the new legislation is compulsory. You can already start things. So what would you not as a person who knows a lot about Belgium situation, what could start today that it's not started yet concerning the European health data space? Yeah, I see that it's not, you don't have an answer like that. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I can try. Just absolutely, the health data space is not my field, but I'm involved in many European projects with regard to that, so I have some ideas anyway. And one of the main challenges that I see at the Belgian level is the interoperability.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying that.
Yeah.
And everybody is very much in favor of the European health data space because it brings potential. It brings a lot of benefits potentially, especially for research. But the problem is that we don't have the infrastructures to allow that to happen. So I think in Belgium, even though Belgium is a very virtuous reality, let's be honest, we're way much ahead compared to many other European countries. So I think we are a good pilot, right? At the same time, Estonia, for example, has a very successful way of implementing these infrastructures. So I think we should a bit humble down and see what other countries are doing, those that are very virtuous, and at the same time work on from a technical point of view on how to make that possible. Anybody else? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So thanks very much. I think it was very clear and Paglia's presentation actually explained some of these things in a plain terms without unnecessary legal language around it. You know, there is a saying that if you're healthy, you have many problems. If you're sick, you only have one. And I think there is nothing better. I mean, nothing encapsulates patient centricity more than giving patients access to cutting-edge treatments that are available out there in the world. I do see some of these regulations limiting some of these options for our patients in Europe. So what's your take on how will this AI Act impact, let's say, access to some of these maybe experimental, maybe cutting-edge technologies?
Thank you. I really see your point and I see your struggle and I'm with you in that. So the AI Act. So before this week, I was in a conference with indeed medtech people. So super frustrated about the AI Act, right? And what the point is, the risk is, because I'm with you on the fact that what patient wants is actually a treatment, is actually a solution, way more than knowing what is going on, right? Because the people that are lucky enough to understand what is going on, indeed are the healthy people most of the time. So is the AI Act creating a problem? I think it's creating a problem in the moment in which companies cannot comply with that. And that risk is especially true for small companies. And I do some consulting some now and then, and I see the struggle. I see the technical incapability of complying with the regulation that for now is not yet enforced, but it's gonna be a problem. And I think the risk is that companies will just try to sneak out. And this was already happening with the medical device regulation anyway. Like manufacturers will try to down classify the medical device. And the fact that the medical device regulation and the AI Act are so close, what is going to happen is that probably it's a double effect. It's going to reinforce what happened with the medical device regulation. So people are going to downstream their medical device so that the medical device do not figure as a high-risk AI under the AI Act because they are very much correlated. And so they won't have to comply with the AI Act as well. This is the main risk. And therefore, at the end, you're out. But what you produce is less safe because you're not tested, okay? So I'm not saying you're right or wrong. It's just, this is gonna happen, right? I had another point to make about the AI Act. Wait a second. No, it passed through my mind. No, it's gone. It's gone. I had a thought, but now it's gone. But I'm gonna come back to you about that. The problem is that people are not gonna comply in general. And it's gonna happen because if you start talking with manufacturers, yeah, it's really that their intention in general.
You have one final question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think the major risk of AI acts and similar regulations, including European health data spaces, that usually it's implemented by bureaucrats who don't really understand that much in technology, and even though things can be implemented in a proper way, that usually it's implemented bureaucratic way. And in terms of for example, so there are some real problems that I've seen in, for example, medical AI. Typical problems that startups, they train their models in some distribution. For example, people from 30 to 50 years old, and when a patient that is like 60 years old would come, then it may not be as accurate. So such things actually, I think what can benefit if maybe there will be not enforcing, but some best practices that would allow more transparency, and not like you forbid, but to use something that transparency on the way how AI systems were trained, and because often patients actually have higher competencies than doctors in AI, and is maybe it makes sense like that patient later can read the paper, what were the benchmarks, what the AI system does, and make an opinion.
Okay, I see you're a technical person because the impression you have about patient is very much biased. I mean, I don't think many patients can understand what an AI system is. Like, I really don't have that impression. Like, and I work with patient association most of the time, and we're not there yet. Like now, the European Patient Forum, I don't know if you know them, they're making an amazing job with the European Health Data Space. And they there is this project called Data Save Lives, and they are bringing patients aware of health data transfer or other kind of health data related usage. And that's a very virtuous process, but most of the time, even in Belgium, but it is a highly health literate kind of country, like patients don't have any idea about artificial intelligence most of the time.
But the patients associations, there are some technical people that could help.
Of course.
If there is enough information provided, more like how much, so they can just read documentation and tell the other patients that, oh, you know, this model has a problem.
No, but wait, I don't understand your point probably. So I think one end is the fact that the AI system can be trained on certain data sets that represent a certain type of population. And then if I got your question correctly,
It should be transparent when it was applied and trained. So at least people, if they want to know, they should be able to read it. So that should be like a ways if a person by accident is technical or have a technical friend, then there should be clearly provide the links that they could actually give it to a technical friend and read about details, because often such information is not provided by anybody, and it leads actually to troubles. Many medical AI fail just because of it. Like, for example, Watson, it failed because of this distribution mismatch.
Okay, so there is with regard to that, the AI Act tried to make an explainability kind of requirement, right? So one of the requirements says, try to explain your system as much as you can first. And the second is about data training and accuracy. So basically, you're supposed to say on which kind of population you trained your AI system, and if it's supposed to be used on the same kind of population, or if you can enlarge the scope of the application, for example, to other people, and with which kind of accuracy, with which level of accuracy you can use. So I think the AI Act is trying to go towards you in that sense. I'm not really sure it's gonna work because there is always a margin of uncertainty. There is always a margin of non-explainability. But I think the AI Act is really much trying to do what you
Well,
are
if
saying.
patients would be able to access would be nice. actually.
Yeah, we have one more talk and then we have a break, so the.
Oh yeah, then we can talk
conversation-
for 1 hour or so.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Wait,
thank you.
take out. Yes.